All right, welcome to the Life of a Marketer podcast again. And today I am with Brad Schlachter, who is an outsourced CMO. Brad, welcome to the Life of a Marketer podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, just to remind you guys, our podcast airs every day on Tuesday, every Tuesday, Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. You can catch us. We stream it on LinkedIn. We stream it on Facebook, and then we also put it on YouTube. So if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to watch it at any time. All right, Brad, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you for a minute. Tell us about what you do, and give us the details about how you're able to help companies.
Sure. I've been in marketing for a long time. I have over 20 years experience, and I've worked for some larger companies like Disney and Microsoft, and also early stage startups. Currently, I'm working as a fractional CMO, and so I work with companies to provide them with forward-thinking CMO leadership, and I provide custom plans to help plot the shortest path to growth. I, you know, my areas of expertise include brand positioning, customer acquisition, customer engagement, um, conversion rate optimization, things like that. And I work primarily with companies that are technology focused or content focused, but not exclusively in that area.
Okay, awesome. So I'm always interested in conversion rate optimization, being having a marketing agency. Brad, I want to dive into that. Would you just to look for a minute? What when you take on and you start working with a company, what are usually the biggest problems that you find when it comes to conversion rate optimization, and how do you help companies solve that?
Yeah, and it's a good question, and it certainly it varies. I mean, when I work with early stage startups that are launching a product, um, they haven't always proven that there's a true product market fit. So sometimes, you're trying to sell a product when maybe there isn't really a need for it, or the messaging, the brand positioning hasn't been really fleshed out so that you're really conveying what's different or better about the product or what pain point it's solving. So sometimes, it is related to the product itself.
Mhm.
But and so you need to dig into that and understand, what is the unique value proposition and how to position the product. And that's what I recommend for all my clients is really the starting point is making sure you're starting with product positioning that's been tested and validated and you've proven that product market fit. In other cases, they have a great product, but maybe there's not a great user experience. Maybe there's a lot of friction on the website. It's not clear how to convert, and maybe there's too many steps in the process, or the call to action is not prominently featured, or it's not a strong call to action. So sometimes it's really just about working with a client to improve the user experience to make it more clear what the user you want the user to do and why, and have stronger calls to action, and that could lead to dramatic increases in conversion rates.
Of those two, which is the most common problem? Um, I have my theory about that. I'm just curious what you think.
Yeah, I would say with early stage startups, it's really a combination of both. I think sometimes what I've seen with startups is, they have a product or a service, they get funding, and then they're looking, excuse me, they're looking to scale really quickly after they get funding to sort of prove that, that there's a place for their product, that their product can scale. Um, Not all of those companies have gone through the steps of really doing a thorough brand positioning analysis, competitive analysis, fully understanding, what the need or pain point they're trying to solve. Um, and so without that guidance, without having that brand positioning as sort of the lens to have all your marketing communication go through, um, your chances for success are less. So I'd say maybe not half, but there are a fair number of companies that haven't done that extra work. But then fortunately for, I'd say the majority of companies, they have done that work, but they aren't experts in how to best present the product and provide the best user experience to optimize for conversion. And that's a much easier problem to solve. And thankfully, conversion rate optimization and it is something that can be relatively straightforward and can offer significant benefits.
Yeah, I have built probably, I don't know, along with the help of graphic designer, I've built and conceptualized and designed about, I don't know, 1,500 landing pages or so, or 2,000. I don't know how many, thousands of them. And for me, usually the number one issue with them is what's being offered.
Yeah.
Normally that's the place where you start. And then the other half is the way that it looks, where the button is, what the call to action is. But the problem that you're solving, making that obvious, and then the offer, to me, that's like the usually that the offer is the problem.
Yeah.
And your inability to articulate how you're solving a problem. That's
Yeah.
been my experience. I don't know. I thought it was interesting what you were just talking about with startups, and but anyways.
Yeah, and I think, at a high level, just a landing page, you just need to be clear, okay, what is the purpose of this landing page? What do we want the user to do? And then just make sure that you're being really clear on guiding the user to take that step, because it's easy to, you know, try to communicate too much, and you want to talk about this and you want to talk about that feature, and you want them to maybe sign up for your newsletter, or you want them to do a number of different things. And if you have different um, tasks or different calls to actions that are competing with each other, you're going to just end up diluting your message and reducing your conversion rate. So it's really at a high level, keeping things really simple, understanding what you want the user to do, and make sure that you're really 100% focused on driving people towards that goal. Is sort of the high level advice I would give my clients.
Right, right. Very good. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So changing gears a little bit, Brad, let me ask you, what's the best thing about being in the marketing industry?
Yeah, I think for me, it's one, you're always learning. By nature, marketing is about testing and optimizing and looking at data, seeing what's working, what's not working, coming up with a hypothesis on why this is working or what you can do to improve performance. There's all these new tools that are always, that are coming out, and technologies, improving. So for me, and just getting to work with different clients in different verticals, I get to learn about, the video streaming space or the video game space, or whatever business vertical it is. It's always great to be able to be exposed to these new industries and start to understand how they work and the challenges that they're facing. So for me, it's just a lifelong path of learning. And what I like to say is, in marketing, it's okay to fail, as long as you fail quickly, right? So you fail, but you learn from your mistakes, you pivot, and you go on.
Failing quick. I want to steal that. I want to steal that quote from now on in sales conversations. Fail quickly. That's a really good line there, to fail quickly. I appreciate that, Brad. All right. So what sort of advice do you offer to people that are in the marketing industry right now?
Yeah, I mean, having been in the industry for more than 20 years, I can tell you, and I talked about how you always need to be learning and the industry is evolving. And my advice is always to stay on top of those new trends. You know, 20 years ago when I started, I was working primarily in the video game space, and video games were primarily being sold at retail on disc, right? And now, pretty much all of entertainment has pivoted from retail to a digital presence, whether it's gaming or video streaming. And if I hadn't evolved, you become extinct, right? And so
Mhm.
I know a lot of, unfortunately, some of the people I worked with early in my career who were focused on retail product launches and shied away from mobile or shied away from the digital aspect of the business, they're no longer in marketing. And
Mhm.
so it's just important. I mean, you can't be an expert on everything, but certainly when there's general trends that are that it's clear that a market's heading in a certain direction, don't fight it. You need to embrace it. You need to learn, and you need to adapt.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. A big one right now that I've been messing with the past few days actually is I'm starting to try to learn more about AI. It's just it's incredible the AI now. That's I think in 3 to 5 years, marketing is going to be more about training the AI, training the AI algorithms. It's going to change completely. It's going to be more about like how you're helping the AI to achieve what your goal is. I was just in chat GPT, I think it's called, and the other day, and was just doing some. I had just done a major research project on a research on a new project, and so then I just wanted to test it out. So I started asking it questions about my research project, and it was just I had spent probably a whole day doing this research, and it spit me out the same thing in about 5 minutes. It was fascinating to see. So I think that's gonna definitely change the horizon big time, and it's something that as marketers we're gonna have to be more learn more and more. If not, you're gonna get left behind, just like when it was they would sell a physical DVD or CD or whatever that you could put in your computer and run a program, and that's kind of the next thing.
Yeah, I've been playing around with Chat GBT as well, and I'm a baseball fan and a Mets fan, and I asked it to write a poem about the New York Mets. And as a long-suffering Mets fans, I can tell you that the poem was overly optimistic, but it was really fun to play around with that. But yeah, I mean, I guess in not too long, you could maybe have Chat GPT as a guest on your podcast. Maybe you don't need marketing expertise.
Well,
We're not there yet. We're not there yet, but
I
it
hope we don't get to that point. That would be kind of frightening, I think.
it
Oh
would.
man. Yeah, I don't know about that. It's over. I did notice that. It's super optimistic, Chat GPT. It's got it doesn't really bring out it's like it doesn't want to make you mad, it doesn't want to bring out any negatives. So that's one thing I did notice. So I don't think we're quite to the point where we can replace humans. Probably never will be, but it is going to change the game for sure, I think.
Sure. No,
Um,
it's another tool, and I'm half joking that obviously any tool there's always threats, and things are certain jobs are getting automated, and that certainly is a real issue. But it's a little bit scary, but it's also really exciting. And like I said, you need to embrace things like that and not turn your back to them.
Sure, for sure, for sure. There's some software that I started to use that will it's AI for Excel. So if you're not that good at Excel, which I don't consider myself to be a top Excel user, you can just tell it what to do and it just push puts out the Excel formulas and everything for you. It's just fantastic. So there's advantages to that, and then there are drawbacks. I don't know what's gonna happen. All right, so moving on to the next question. What's some other successful people in marketing like yourself that you would like to acknowledge that you think should be on this podcast?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of great people over the years. One person in particular that I'd call out is a woman named Lauren Kozak, who is a social media expert. And I've used her a number of times at various companies to help with social media strategy and social media execution. And she's worked with people like Britney Spears back in the day, and the LA Times, but also with lots of smaller brands and startups. So she's a real pro, and would highly recommend her.
All right, thank you for that recommendation. We'll try to look her up. All right, so one final question that's just for fun. This is always a fun question. Tell me the oldest technology that you remember using.
Yeah, so I started my career in the video game space because I'm a gamer, and I'm still a gamer, and I I kind of consider myself a reformed hardcore gamer, right? I don't play nearly as much as I used to because my wife wouldn't tolerate it, but I'm still pretty passionate about games. So I don't know if it was the first technology I used, but my recollections are, playing around with the Atari 2600 of the Atari VCS, and then also not long after that with the Mattel and television, both early stage video game consoles. I even also had like a Commodore 64 and a lot of different technology, but it was really all about gaming. So those are my earliest recollections, whether it was computer games or early video games on the Atari or the Mattel and television. And look, and that passion led to a career for me, which was great.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that on the podcast that mentioned Atari. We have Commodore 64, which was a big one. And then I think the oldest that we had mentioned was a handheld radio or something like that. Someone who's way, a little bit older, and but still working. And she
I had the Commodore 64, and then I think the next one they had after that was the Amiga, which I had that as well.
Oh wow, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
it was the Commodore Amiga. So, yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. And I mean, obviously by today's standards, the graphics and the processing power was, was minimal, but at the time it was cutting edge. And so it was pretty exciting.
Yes, yeah. So we gone from Atari to what we have now, like on a phone, some sophisticated games with amazing graphics. It's just it's interesting, and kind of it's kind of like people now, they have to just like we're talking about, they have to be willing to adapt to big changes very quickly. Just everything is always changing, and it's an interesting time to be alive for sure. Um, all right, awesome. Well, Brad, we'd like to keep our podcast pretty short, so we're gonna stop here. But I really appreciate you coming on, and I think we learned some interesting things today. You can catch our podcast, everyone, once again, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. We stream it on social media. We also put it up on YouTube. So if you follow us there on our Life of Marketer podcast channel, like, subscribe, help us out, help us to continue to grow this podcast. And thank you once again, Brad. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thank you.